Okay, so let's begin and daven that the fruits of our learning should help to bring home finally our last hostage, Ron Kvili, and protect our soldiers, Israel, the innocents, be a protection for Jewish community around the world, wherever we may be. And also as an Ilui Neshama for my mother, Shlama Leah Bas Menachem Mendel Rachel. Today was my last day of saying Kaddish for her,
Mm.
and her Yortzeit will be in a month. So, yes. Um, okay. Oh, and Paul came too. Very nice.
What do you know?
Very good. Let's just give a second for Paul to connect. Hi, Paul. How are you? Oh, can he hear us? He's getting up and walking. So maybe he's looking for his headset. All right. You know what? Until he comes back, I think the end of last shir, I looked at this Mishnah with you in Mishnah Nahalos. Is that correct? We looked at this a little bit. So I think we'll talk a little bit about this, and there's another Gemara that we're just going to glance at in Chulin. And then I think we'll spend a little bit of time looking at the Shulchan Aruch. As I say, these are uh, these are sources that are going to be very important for understanding modern questions regarding end of life issues. And so I think it's worth taking a little bit of time to look at them without, you know, without necessarily going into a lot more detail. Um, but then also, if you have questions or things that you want to follow up on, then we can discuss that. There's an enormous amount of literature that's been written just in the last few decades on these issues. So we can skim the surface of some of it. I think that will be helpful. But if you have specific questions, we can also. So, okay. So Michael Schwartz, why don't you read the Mishnah? Do you see
Adam,
that? Adam Eina Mitameh? Yes?
yeah. That's it. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Adam enu mitame ad shetete nafsho, bafilo miguyad, bafilo goses, sokek libum, ufoter min hayibum, me'achil betruma, uposel betruma, וכן בהמה וחיה ואינן מטמאין עד שתצא נפשם, הוצאו ראשיהם, אף על פי שהם מפרקסים טמאים כגון זנב של לטאה שהיא מפרכסת.
Okay. So can you translate that for us? Adam
Okay,
Eina
so
Mitameh.
a man does not cause
Hello,
tumor.
All right, Paul? Hello?
hello.
Paul? One second. Paul, I'm sorry. Can you hear us? Yeah? You're no? Yes? No? You're muted.
Do you hear me now?
Yes. And can you
Okay.
hear
Yeah, it's
us?
okay. Yeah, yes, it's okay now.
Oh, okay.
So-
Beside it. All right. We've overcome the technical issue. Okay, Michael Schwartz. I'm sorry. Continue. Adam eno mitame.
Uh, a man does not cause tuma until his soul departs. Afilu, even a miguyad, even a goses. Miguyad. I don't remember a goses. I remember was someone that's like on their deathbed, but I don't remember a miguyad.
Yad is somebody who's cut up. Could be somebody who's
Oh,
dismembered. His body has been cut up. See, Bartenura says, Meguyad mechutach, Lashon godu ilan, to cut a tree. Somebody who's literally somebody who's cut up. In other words, if somebody's cut up in the point of the Meguyad and Goses, these are people who are terminally ill. They're going to die imminently. Right? So but nonetheless, they're not mitamei ad shetetzei nafsham, right? Until their soul departs. Uh, Continues. Okay, kli yibum.
so kekli libum, that they're required to do yibum, and they're poterma yibum.
Okay, so zokek liyibum, it doesn't mean exactly this. Zokek liyibum means, here, we'll see the Bartunu says, zokek liyibum kol zman shugoses yivimto asura v'hinaseh. All the time that he is on the verge of death, but he hasn't actually died, his yivama is not allowed to marry. So who's his yivama?
That would be the wife of his brother that passed away.
Well, right. Kozon Shuhugo says Yivimto Asur Lihina said that the Izyavama is actually is going to be uh, his, uh, his wife. In other words, she's
Okay.
about to be a Yivama.
Okay, okay. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, she's about right. Um, well, actually, Kozman Shuhugo says Yivimto. Asurali to say no. What you said is also true. You said it's true. That in other words, if he if his brother had died and he left a wife with no children, so that's his. So this let's say the brother was Reuven, and this is Shimon, and Shimon is Goses. As long as he's Goses, it means that in principle he could still do Yibum. And so therefore she's not allowed to marry, right? So and we make a distinction here, right? When you talk about yibum, yibum is distinct from marriage. It's not marriage. Yibum is this particular procedure that will effectively marry two people, but it's only through this, the particulars of yibum. Whereas Lehinase means to marry anybody, somebody who doesn't have any particular relationship to this person. But also, Ufoter min hayibum, he renders uh, he renders exempt from yibum. Baratuna explains, im mate, if he dies and he left a son who's goses, Ishtop Tura mina chalitza mina yibum. Right? So if he dies, so here we have Shimon dies, and when he died, he did leave a son. So despite the fact that the son itself is Goses, it nonetheless the fact that the son is alive, even if he's imminently going to die, it will render the son's mother, right, this person's uh, wife, it will render her exempt from doing yibum, which would also automatically read her exempt from doing chalitza, either way. So the point of this about Zokekli Yibum, Totemina Yibum, is that um, the for, these are all these are these are instances where the moment of death is going to be halachically significant. If somebody dies and leaves a wife with no son, right? So the wife is becomes a yivama to the deceased's brother or brothers, which is a yivama to them. But if whatever, so you can play this out in different scenarios. So, for example, there's Mishnah in Yevamos that talks about this idea that uh, the woman finds out, a woman is told her, a woman's husband went abroad, and then she gets news, uh, and he went abroad with their son, and she gets news that her husband died, and then her son died. So it means that at the time, if that's true, that means at the time that the husband died, the wife was exempt from Yibum because she had a son. She had a surviving son. So that even if the son dies after, as long as there was a moment in time after her husband died that the son was alive, so she does not become a Yavama. But if the opposite is true, that she finds out that her son died and then her husband died, so then she is a Yavama. Right? If there's a brother to her um, deceased husband, then he has to do Yibum or Chalitza. So the point being, again, all of these are just pointing out that the moment of death is significant for this purpose. And we also have Ma'achil Betruma Uposel Betruma. What does that mean?
So he feeds truma, and he also posel the truma, disqualifies it.
So here Martin explains Ma'achil Betruma et imo, right? In other words, Im hi bat Yisrael shniseit lekohen. So what's the case here?
So
If
the
she
mother of he's a Cohen, then the mother eats can continue to eat. The mother eats the truma because she gets the I can't think of the word. She's allowed to eat it because of him, and as long as he's still alive, even though he's even a goses or miguyad, she's still allowed to eat it.
right, she can still eat truma. Im hi bat Yisrael shniseit lekohen. So this person's mother, to begin with, was a bat Yisrael. So until she married a Kohen, she was not allowed to eat truma. Then she married a Kohen and she was allowed to eat truma. And then maybe, let's say her husband died, but she already had a son from this marriage. So the son is a Kohen, and so he can, based on his status as a Kohen, as long as he's alive, his mother will still eat truma. But if he's actually dead, then she'll revert to her original status, which was about being about Yisrael, which means that she was not allowed to eat truma. But he can also be posel bat truma, can be posel at imo min truma, im bat kohen Yisrael. Right. So what about the opposite case? Let's say his mother originally she was a bat kohen. She came from a family of kohanim, meaning her father was a Kohen, and then she married a Yisrael. So when she married the Yisrael, then she was no longer allowed to eat truma. And as long as her son from that marriage is still alive, he's posel ota mina truma. He will invalidate her, in other words, prevent her from being allowed to eat truma. Okay? וכן בהמה וחיה אינן מטמאים עד שתצא נפשם. So similarly, a, a domesticated animal or a wild animal, they're not mitamin. They don't impart tuma until their soul departs, until they're completely dead. What does it mean, not mitamin? Bartenu explains tumat nevelot, right? So animals, by all animals don't impart tuma at all until they are dead. This is unlike humans. Humans can become tameh and impart tuma while we're still alive. But this is not true of animals. Animals are never mitameh until they are dead. So for behema and chaya, if they died shelo al yedei shlita kshera, they died without having a kosher shlita, then they're considered to be a nevela, and a nevela imparts tuma. So, v'chein behema v'chaya einan mitamin ad shetetzei nafsha. So similar to what we said about Adam, right? Adam eino mitameh. Here it means, so what does it mean at the beginning? Because I just explained Adam eino mitameh, but it's possible for a person to be mitameh while he's still alive. But what does it mean, Adam eino mitameh ad shetetzei nafsho?
He does
Well,
not
yeah.
impart to.
Michael Werner, go ahead.
He does not impart tuma by virtue of being dead.
Okay,
Or,
in other words,
or the what like that was I forget was particular. He doesn't impart tuma met until his.
okay, yeah, right. In other words, person can impart tuma in many different ways, but he is not mitame mishum mate until he's actually dead. Right? He doesn't become an avatuma or aviavotatuma of being a mate until he actually dies. And then v'chein, so similarly with the behema v'chaya, they don't impart tuma uh, of nevelot until they're actually dead. Uh, Michael Schwartz, you can finish off Hutzuro Sheheb. What does that mean?
Um, I don't know. Hutsu, I don't know. It's something their
Lahatiz.
heads.
If their
Oh,
head got
yeah, the shearing. Is it?
they got cut off,
The head got cut off. Oh,
right? If their head was cut off, af al pi shemefarkasim. What does that
even
mean?
even though that they are like not like shuddering. I was gonna say you're like running around crazy
Yeah,
Convulsing.
or like shuddering, like
right. We said last week convulsing, the shuddering. In other words, but
convulsing. Oh,
there's
that's the word.
still
Yes, yeah.
yeah, okay. They're still moving. Tameim.
So they're at that stage they can impart tuma,
They are right. They are mitame, even though what? Af al pi
even though they,
shemefarkasim.
even though they're still moving around.
Right. So and then we bring the last thing, right, that to illustrate this, Kegon zanav shel ta'ah shehi mifaknasa. What does that mean?
So like the tail of a lizard that if you pull it off, it continues to wiggle.
Mm-hmm. So what do we get now from this last part of Utsu Roshehem?
Then that they're considered dead when their heads are cut off, even though they're still convulsing.
Right. So in other words, we understand that determining the point of death. Well, here actually, before I say that, Utsu Roshehem. Who are we talking about here? If their heads were cut off, who are we talking about?
The animals.
Yeah. Who else could we be talking about?
Human being.
Oh,
Human
I
beings,
didn't
right?
think
In
about
other words,
that.
everybody, right? Because in other words, until now we said Adam einam tamei, and then we say also ken behema b'chayei tamin. Hutzuros shehem. If their heads are cut off, it could refer back to behema, chaya, and Adam, all three. So even though they're right, if their heads were cut off, even though they're still mefarkasim, right? Even though they're still convulsing, they're tamei meaning that they can impart tuma. Kigon in like the way the tail of a lizard convulses, right? So what does it mean? What's the kigon like? What's like what? What are we learning from the tail of the lizard?
The tail lizard is like the body of the person who has been decapitated. It's
Mhm. Yeah, the person or the animal that's been decapitated, right? So that right. So okay, so this is all a little bit grim, but nonetheless. Um, so okay, so what do we get in general out of this Mishnah that until someone is dead, they're considered to be alive, right? In other words, and we go through for different halachic purposes, for yibum, for being machil b'truma, or be posel b'truma. In other words, there are different reasons we consider a person to be alive. Ad say nafsho. Now, what it doesn't tell us is exactly at what point is somebody's uh, nefesh yatsa. It doesn't say exactly when that happens. All I know is that until that happens, for all halachic purposes, they are considered to be alive. So they're not mitameh, which means they're not mitameh ba'ohel. So if you're a kohen, um, you're allowed to be in the same room as this person, even though they're on the verge of death. You're allowed to be with them, of course, until the moment of death. At that point, you're not allowed to be there if you're a kohen. If you're not a kohen, you're allowed to be there because there's no iser for a non-kohen to become tameh. None of us, I don't think any of us are kohanim. We're not forbidden from becoming tameh tumat meit. The only thing that's forbidden is if you are tameh, the tumat meit, then you have restrictions on you, which nowadays mostly means that you're not allowed to go in certain places on Harabayit, not right until you would have until you would undergo a process of tahara using the paratuma and all of that. But otherwise, there's no Isser for us to become Tameh. But there is an Isser for a Kohen, even Bisman Hazeh, to become Tameh. So he would have to be aware if someone is about to die, that it might be a good idea for him to leave that building. But until that person dies, they're not over. So, but what do we get? We do get from the end of the Mishnah, Hutzuro Shehem, we do get at least one instance where we know for sure that someone is dead, right? We know for sure that if someone's head gets cut off, then for all halachic purposes, they are dead, despite the fact that they may be moving. So we understand that the fact that they're moving, the fact that they're convulsing, is not an indication of life. And why isn't it an indication of life?
Because that's something we know from the case of, I mean, it's based on autonomic. It's like the tail of the lizard that sort of jerks and convulses even though it's no longer alive.
Okay, in other words, so what we know, what we know is that the Mishnah tells us bim forash that hutzuro shehem tameim. The Mishnah says if someone's head is cut off, they are definitely tamei. And if you want to understand, like, how could it be that they're tamei? I still see the body shifting or moving or convulsing. So we'll say it's also like if I cut off the tail of a lizard, and that will still also convulse, even though it's obviously not a living thing anymore. Right? It's been removed from the living body of the of the lizard. Okay, so what we get from this is we do have one example where we know for sure there's a clear moment of death, and that's if somebody's head gets cut off. Right? So that's not something that happens every day. It's not so common,
Baruch
right?
Hashem.
Unless Baruch Hashem, right? And we don't have these things. I don't know if anybody ever read the book Master and Margarita, quite popular with Russian speakers. But it starts off it starts off with person that's actually the devil in the form of a person who informs somebody that they're going to be decapitated, and they live in Moscow in the 20th century. So it's like, how am I going to get decapitated? But it happens that right after that, there's this kind of a strange accident where their head gets too close to a trolley cable, and the cable cuts their head off. So it can happen to also, but for our purposes that we're talking about, how do we know when somebody is dead, and for what purpose is it important? So in our sugya, the reason we wanted to know if someone is dead was what? Why did we want to know if someone was dead or alive?
Going. I mean, you're talking about, and you're talking about the present sugya or the sugya or Yoma.
In Yoma, when we were learning in Yoma.
Okay. So we want to know if somebody's alive or dead for the purposes of knowing whether we're still obligated to do Pekuach Nefesh, even though it is Shabbat.
Mm-hmm. Right. In other words, are we allowed to, or even obligated to, be Mechalel Shabbat to save someone's life? So as long as the person is alive, then yes, we are. And in fact, our Gemara, we learned in our Sugya that afilu l'chayei sha'a, even for a momentary life, as it were. In other words, even if we know that they're not going to live much longer, we're still supposed to be Machal Shabbos to extend their life as much as possible. And how do we know that and based on our Gemara, what was the determination of death? How did I know if someone was dead or alive?
If he had a pulse. Well, actually, no. There were the two opinions. I forget which one ended up being accepted. The one is, if he has a pulse.
Michael Schwartz. What did we learn from her? It's okay.
Is breathing. You check the nose for breath.
Right. In other words, what we concluded was, we said, yeah, there was a machloket about checking. Do you stop if you check the nose, or do you stop if you check the the according to one gears of tibur, right, which is the tabur, the navel or the chest. But what the Gemara said, the Gemara concluded was everybody holds the machloket is only if you were checking from below to above, right? So if you started at, let's say, toward the bottom, toward the feet of the person, and you were moving up. But if you were checking from the head down, as soon as you determine that they're no longer breathing, then you stop. Everybody holds that if they're not breathing, that you stop. So knowing that, how do you think that might relate to what we just learned here in the Mishnah?
Presumably, that would be the measure of that would be the measure of titse nafsho.
Yeah, but what do we get? So first of all, yes, that's true. But again, what do we have here specifically that we didn't have over there?
Well, in this case,
What's our
having
go
one's
ahead.
having one's head cut off is also a sign of death.
Okay, so now what's the relationship between having somebody's head cut off and not breathing?
They no longer have a nose.
Well, in other words, it's right. It sounds a little bit ridiculous, but the point is, if somebody's head is cut off, even if they are convulsing, so even meaning what? If any part of their body is still moving, then I still consider them to be dead because their head was cut off. So what we know in reality, this is not necessarily something you get from the Mishnah, from the Gemara, but what we know in reality, we do get somewhat from the Mishnah. Someone's heart can still be beating even after they're decapitated. That's a physical reality, right? That's part of the convulsing of a human or an animal, is that their heart still beats. And that's why, I've never actually witnessed an animal being slaughtered, but when an animal is slaughtered, blood spurts out. And why does it spurt out? Because there's a heart that's pushing, that's beating, that's pushing the blood. It doesn't just spill out, it spurts out, it shoots out. So the fact that the heart is beating, one could conclude, one might say that the fact that the heart is beating, that in and of itself is not a sign of life, that a person could already be dead. So, but what else would have to be true based on our Mishnah? That their head has to be cut off. So what if their head isn't literally cut off? What else would be like having one's head cut off?
Maybe
What's akin?
the trachea, the throat severed.
So this is an interesting thing. If you're saying if the windpipe gets cut off, but maybe what's at stake here is actually that the spinal cord is cut. Now this starts to get a little more technical. We'll look at maybe one more thing for today. Okay.
What would happen if you do an shrita in this case?
What
And
if you shed
the
some?
body is still how do you say, מפרכס?
Right, they're still convulsing. So
Convolving.
right, so here's the thing. What we see from the Mishnah and Ohalot is that the fact that It doesn't. The Mishnah in Ohalot doesn't say that the animal is. How should I put it? It doesn't talk about an animal that was shechted. It doesn't talk about an animal that was slaughtered. It talks about an animal whose head was cut off. When you do shchita, if you're doing a kosher shchita, then you have to cut through most of the windpipe and the food pipe. You have to cut through both of them. And at the moment you cut through them, it doesn't mean that the animal is dead. We know that the animal will definitely die once you do the shchita. That the animal isn't necessarily dead at the moment of shchita. Now, what's the other way that the Torah mandates killing animals, specifically fowl?
Decapitation.
It's not decapitation.
Oh,
It's
there's it's like the hint is
what's
like
what's the term? Don't try to
I don't remember the
elaborate.
term.
What's the term?
I don't remember the
Okay,
term.
okay,
Malika.
Malika,
Malika.
and right, and what's Malika?
I thought just where the Cohen takes his like fingernail and presses down on the spine.
Right. So in other words, Malika comes from the back of the neck, and and whether it's complete decapitation or not depends on which. It depends on the korban that you're bringing. But the point is that you at the Kohen there, he actually breaks the spine, and by doing that, he breaks through the spinal cord. So the oaf dies immediately. The death is immediate. Michael, where you want to say
No,
something?
also I mean also for the an unredeemed firstborn of a chamor, you also break its neck from the back, which is presumably
You break it right, but that's arifa, and that's
Arifa,
another way, which is another way of killing. We also have the egla arufa, right? And that's in that sense that you could argue that's similar to, but not the same as Malika. In other words, both of those are cases where you kill the animal not by way of shlita. That's not shlita. Shlita is when you cut from the front of the neck and you cut through rov shnei simanim. You have to cut through most of the windpipe and the food pipe. Yes, but you're right. We also have arifa as a manner of killing. We have for the bechor behema, and we have for the egla rufa. Very good. So we have methods of killing. So what we got out of so what do we but what so what's our concern? Our concern is not that we don't know how to kill animals, but we want to know is what is this point of sha'ad shetetzei nafsho? What's the point at which the animal or the human dies? Because we see it will have halachic implications. We have to know for halachic reasons. So in Yoma, our reason is we want to know if this is a human being. We want to know if I'm going to be Machal Shabbos to keep them alive. And in other cases, I need to know because of maybe because of Yibum, because of Truma, could be also for matters of inheritance, for matters of Tuma, right? There are all kinds of reasons for matter of could be also Shayach for get. We can go through and we can think of different reasons, but let's say for our purpose in Yoma, the most important thing is to what degree am I going to be Machal Shabbos in order to keep somebody alive, or and in general, I want to know what are my obligations under halacha to keep someone alive generally. At what point do I consider them to no longer be alive? So once I know they're not alive, so I'm actually talking about two different things. once I can determine for certain that someone is no longer alive, then I don't do anything to keep them alive. There's no point in trying to keep them alive if I know that they are dead. Then the other question though that will come up is what if I'm not sure if they are dead? And we already gave an example of that, I think, last week or the week before, where you can have a case where somebody may be put on life support systems like a ventilator, and I don't know if I'm keeping them alive by keeping solely because of the ventilator, and that if I stop the ventilator, if they would, I would discover that they're already dead. Or if I remove them from the ventilator, maybe that's going to kill them, right? So it becomes a difficult question. So here, let's look at another case, interesting
Actually,
case, which, yeah, go ahead, Paul.
there is no concern about the suffering of the animal, if the animal is suffering this way or another way.
Why do you say there's no
Well,
concern?
no, because nowadays this is a very important issue, but it didn't say, it seems that it was of no importance
Well,
at the
that's
time of the Mishnah.
no, but actually we know that it was, but not from this Mishnah, but from elsewhere, because we learn out the concept of Tsar Ba'alei Chayim in a Torah. Chazal already defined that as a halachic category, Tsar Ba'alei Chayim. So we know that that was an issue. But our Mishnah isn't talking about that. Our Mishnah is just talking about what happens if you cut off the head of an animal. It's not talking about the suffering or the non-suffering of the animal. Just like cutting off the head of a person. We're not talking about whether they're suffering or not. We just want to know if they're alive or dead. That's the subject of the Mishnah in Ohalot. But it's not it's not the Mishnah's subject there about what you're allowed to do or not allowed to do regarding human suffering or animal suffering. We learn that elsewhere. Those are from different sources. Okay, let's all remind ourselves of this story in Shmuel Aleph. Let's see, Michael Werner. Let's just remind ourselves of this story somewhat. Why don't you read Vayidvar Shmuel and unmute yourself.
ויהי דבר שמואל לכל ישראל ויצא ישראל לקראת פלישתים למלחמה ויחנו על האבן והעזר ופלישתים הנו באפק.
Okay, you don't have to give a literal translation, but what's going on here?
Israel went to make war on the Philistine, and they camped to one side of a particular stone, and the Philistine were on the opposite side, beyond eyesight. The effect would be sort of be beyond out of sight. Nachon?
Well, I'm not so sure.
Afek is a place, so maybe Even HaEzer is also a place.
Right, Evan Haezer, they're both they're names of places.
Okay.
Right? But it's okay. All right, it's okay. Keep reading. V'archu Plishtim.
והלכו פלישתים לקראת ישראל ותיטוש המלחמה וינגף ישראל לפני פלישתים ויכו במערכה בשדה כארבעת אלפים איש.
Okay, so what was going on here?
And so the Philistine crossed over.
Well, Yarchul, they
no, not
went to war.
They went.
Laroch milchama is to carry out war,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Right? So Laroch also means to arrange, like Shulchan Aruch.
Mhm.
But in this concept, right, so they went to war against Israel.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
So the team went to war against Israel. Tosh milchama. Milchama. The war was. I'm going to take a guess, which is always a bad idea.
The Radak explains it means in this Vayitosh can mean to leave, right? But here it means that it's spread out. Pashtu. The war expanded. It went against. They went to war against Israel, but Titosh Milchama, and the war spread out. In other words, the area of battle spread out. Vayinagef Yisrael lifnei Plishtim.
And I seem to recall that Nagef means they were pushed back.
So Gof would mean what? Or that they were,
Beaten.
yeah, they were struck, they were beaten. Here, strike to smite, right?
Smitten.
Gof,
Yes. Okay.
right? Lifnei Plishtim. In other words,
It did not
who's
go well for
winning?
them. Philistine.
Didn't go well for who?
Israel.
Israel.
For Israel, right? So the Plishtim were beating them. Vayakub b'maracha basadek arbat alafim ish.
And some 400 men
Some
took
four
To
arbat
1,000.
alafim.
4,000 men. Excuse me. Some 4,000 men took shelter in a cave in the field of battle, or in the field.
No, Vayaku. Vahakot also is to strike. Vayaku b'maracha basadeh. I'm not sure where you're getting.
Oh, no,
You're thinking of Ma'ara.
exactly,
We're talking
right,
about Ma'aracha.
right.
Vayaku b'ma'aracha. So we know what a Ma'aracha is. It's the
The
field of
field of
battle.
battle. Okay, so some 4,000 men fell in the field of battle.
Right. Very good. Why don't you do one more? Vayavo ha'om.
So I'm doing so well.
Not,
Yes.
not very good.
Yes.
It's okay. I mean, I do. I should have told you to prepare this in advance, and then you would have known everything perfectly. So it's okay. I'm putting you on the spot. Vayavo ha'am.
And the people came to the camp, and they said, and the elders of it, and the elders of Yisrael said, why
Nikafanu.
why were we struck? Why were we smitten?
Right.
Or what?
That's fine. Lama nigafanu Hashem hayom lifnei plishtim.
Right. So why did God strike us today before the Philistine? Smite us before the Philistine.
Okay. Nikcha eleinu mishilo et aron brit Hashem.
And so they took.
Nikcha.
We
will
took.
take.
We
shall take.
We shall take from Shiloh the Aron, the Aron Brit, and God will come in our midst.
Wait a second. Nikcha eleinu mishilo et aron brit Hashem. Now, how do I know that it's Aron Brit Hashem and not Aron Brit, and then Hashem is the beginning of the next clause? Because of the Ta'amei Mikra, right? I know that not everybody is familiar with Ta'amei Mikra, but these are things that you should learn. And one of them is that if you see here, so here, this chupchik here, under the taf of Plishtim, this is an etnachta, which is a pause. And also, it's the word etnachta is used in modern Hebrew just to mean a pause. but this simaniya here is an etnachta, and that comes in the middle of almost every pasuk has an etnachta, which is like a halfway point in the pasuk. So I'm going to
So
skip the first part of the pasuk. Now the second part of the pasuk begins Nikcha Elenu Mishilo. Now without okay, so this is a dargah and a munach and a revi'i. These three go together. Then at Aron Brit Hashem. Now this is important. You see the munach. This is the backward L shaped, right? This 90-degree angle under the resh. That's called a munach, and that will come before. It can come before here, like before the revi'i. It can also come before a katon, which is the two dots on top of the vav of Hashem. And so a munach is always the beginning or the middle of a phrase that's going to be followed by something that finalizes that phrase. So in this case, in the case of the Eleno Mishilo, what finalizes it is the Revi'i. And here what finalizes it is the two dots, which is a katon. So here, to get back to my original point, Nikha Eleno Mishilo would be one phrase. Et Aron Brit Hashem is another phrase. Because Brit and Hashem go together. I can see that from the Munach and the Katon. Okay? Then the pasuk continues, V'yavo b'kirbenu, where I also see that same pattern is repeated, Munach Katon. And then V'yoshienu mikaf oivenu. So, all that to say, what they said was, the Ziknei Yisrael said, let's take to us, right? We'll bring for us from Shiloh, we'll bring the Aron Brit Hashem, V'yavo v'kirbenu, and it will come in our midst, or it could be V'yavo, meaning Hashem will come into our midst, is maybe what they're declaring. V'yoshienu mikaf oivenu, which means what, Michael?
and it or Hashem will save us from the hands of our enemies.
Okay, so Bnei Israel are at war with Plishtim. The war is going very badly for the Jews, for Yisrael. 4,000 men have been killed already on the field of battle. So in a moment of desperation, the Kenim say, we should bring the Aron into battle with us. So Paul, why don't you continue Pasuk Dalet, Vayishlach ha'am Shiloh.
וישלח העם שילה, וייסעו משם את ארון ברית השם, השם צבאות, יושב הכרובים. ושם שני בני אלי הכהן, כן, עם ארון ברית האלוהים, חופני ופנחס. אז זה הבנים שלו.
And so, בקיצור, מה קורה פה?
Well, they send people to Shiloh, who brought the Aron HaKodesh, which is called here Aron Brit Hashem, Hashem Tzvaot. They brought the Aron back. Why do they say that it's Yoshev HaKruvim? It's true that there were Kruvim on the Aron.
No, but that's a continuation then of the name. Et Aron Brit Hashem Tzvakot Yoshev HaKruvim. זה כל
הקדוש ברוך הוא יושב על הכרובים.
Right? In other words, it's the Aron Brit Hashem. It's the Aron Brit of Hashem Tzvakot, who's Yoshev HaKruvim. It's all a title of
the
Aron
Kodesh. Yes.
Right. Okay. And
And there were in Shiloh there were Elia Cohen, yes, he had
Mhm.
two sons, and they came back. They came back with the Aaron Brit Elohim, and their names were Hophni and Pinchas.
Okay. So
Pinchas,
continue.
like Pinchas, the famous Pinchas from the son of
Pinchas
Eliezer. No, yes,
of you
HaKohen.
mean the Pinchas who becomes a Cohen in Brit Hashanah, but
Right.
this is a different Pinchas,
Yeah,
right?
but of course,
Right.
he has the name
But
probably.
he has the
He took
name
that
of
name.
Pinchas, right?
Pinchas, yes.
Vayhi Kevo, go ahead.
וישמעו
Oh, I'm
פלישתים
sorry. No, from here.
אוקיי.
Vayhi.
ויהי כבוא אהרון ברית השם אל המחנה, and when the Aaron HaKodesh came to the camp, ויריעו כל ישראל תרועה גדולה, so all Israel were להריע.
Well,
that's shouting or something. It's not the same.
They trumpeted. They blew, right? They
Yeah,
blew it,
כמו תרועה. Okay.
right?
They trumpeted a big תרועה גדולה, כן? ותהום הארץ. And the whole place, country was shattered, something like this.
Right. It shuddered. Right. Yeah. It rumbled or shuddered. Right. And it was. Everybody was very happy, presumably, because now the Aron was with them, and they did a big trumpeting of their truot, and everything shook. Right. So go ahead. Vayishmu.
וישמעו פלישתים את כל התרועה, ויאמרו מכל התרועה הגדולה הזאת במחנה העברים. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes Israel is called Israel and sometimes it's called Ivrim. We have the same thing in the parasha. And I asked myself, the parasha, the last parasha, sometimes Israel is called Bnei Israel, sometimes it's called Ivrim. Okay.
Right. No, it's interesting that it's even here.
And the Philistines, the Plishtim, heard the voice of the Truah, and they asked themselves, what is this call?
The sound.
Yes, what is this sound of this big sound of the Truah in the camp of the Hebrews? וידעו, והם, they knew, they understood something. כי ארון השם בא אל המחנה. And they understood that the Aaron HaKodesh came to the camp of the Hebrews, of the Israel.
Okay, why don't you do one more about you?
ויראו הפלישתים כי אמרו, בא אלוהים אל המחנה ויאמרו, אוי לנו כי לא הייתה כזאת אתמול שלשום. And the Plishtim were very much afraid. יראה? Or they saw.
No, they were.
יראו, they were afraid. Yes.
They were afraid. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
כי אמרו, as they said themselves, that Elohim came to the camp of Bnei Israel, and they said themselves, "Oy lanu, oy lanu." כי לא, yesterday that wasn't the case. Yesterday and the day before yesterday, they didn't have this the Aaron HaKodesh with them in the camp.
Okay, so the police team are genuinely frightened
They're frightened,
Mohammed,
yeah.
right? Because they see that as it were, ki'ilu, that the Ivrim have now brought their God into battle.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Schwartz, why don't you pick up Pasuk Oilan?
Oilanu mi yatzilinu miyad ha'elokim ha'adirim ha'ele Elehem ha'elokim ha'makim et Mitzrayim b'kol makah b'midbar. Oilanu, woe to us! Who will save us from the hands of from the hand of this strong God? That the God that had struck Egypt in all the blows in the desert.
Mm-hmm. Keep going.
Yichamu Plishtim v'yinagef Yisrael
No,
v'yinisu.
that from here, Hitzchazku.
Oh, v'hit chazku v'hila anashim Plishtim pen ta'avdu la'ivrim kasher avdu lechem v'hitem la'anashim v'nilchamtem. And they were strengthened, and they were
It's a command form. Hitzchazku.
oh
Yeah.
oh strengthen, be strengthened, and
Mm-hmm.
and the the Philistines.
Vihiyu and be.
Oh, and be for uh, the Philistine people, lest.
Biyula anashim plishtim. Be Philistine men.
Oh, okay. Be strengthened and be Philistine. Okay, lest you become servants, slaves to the Ivrim, this Israel, like they served to you, and they were like, I'm confused. High team. They were like people that were battled them.
Well, it's a kasher Abdullahchem. There's, like you said, in other words, it's a cry to the plishtim. Look, you have to man up now, right? You have to be anashim plishtim, because otherwise, maybe you'll end up being subservient to the Ivrim, the way they were servants to you, because the plishtim had dominated the Ivrim, and now you're in danger of having the tables turned on you. V'yitem lanashim, so be men, v'nilchamtem, and go to battle.
Fight.
Yeah, and fight. So go ahead, keep going. V'yilchamu.
V'yilchamu Plishtim v'yinagef Yisrael v'yinisu ish la'ohalav v'tayei hamacheh gadol ma'od v'yapol Yisrael shloshim elef regli. And the Philistines fought, and they struck Yisrael, and they fled, each man to his tent, and there were and there were a great blow, a very great blow, and from Israel fell 30,000 men, soldiers.
Right, like infantry, right? And now, do one more. Va'aron.
Va'aron Elokim nilkach u'shnei b'nei Eli mitu Chafni v'Pinchas, and the Aaron of Hashem was taken, and the two sons of Eli, Chafni and Pinchas, died.
Okay, so the Aaron is taken by
The Philistine,
the plishtim. Okay, Michael Werner, why don't you pick up Bayarat?
V'erat ish Binyamin מהמערכה ויבוש שילה ביום ההוא ומדיו קרויים ואדמה על ראשו. And so a man from the tribe of Benjamin came from the battlefield to Shiloh on that day. And
Okay,
And
so Vayarat, so Vayarat means what?
he ran or he
Uh,
fled.
you're
He,
right, yeah.
so
Right, so right. He ran from the
from the
uh
battlefield to Shiloh.
Vayavosh Shilo Bayamahu.
And he came to Shiloh on that day,
Mm-hmm.
and he
Madav, do you know what Madim are?
no,
It's also in modern Hebrew.
there's news and
Madim.
information.
Madim. In
Uniform.
modern right,
Uniforms.
In modern Hebrew it's uniform. Uh,
Uniforms.
uh,
So they tore their garments and they put earth on their heads.
okay, well, not that they tore their garments. Madav kruim, it's passive. Their garments were torn.
Okay.
In other words, the battle went very poorly, right? And so this guy, who was an Ish Binyamin from the tribe of Benjamin, so he flees the battlefield with his garments torn and with dirt on his head. Okay, in other words, he's he's gotten out as it were by the skin of his teeth. Keep going, Vayavo.
ויבוא הנה אלי יושב על הכיסא דרך
You have to read this word here.
oh
Say yad.
yad and
It's an awkward pasuk, but read it anyway.
okay
Say yad.
yad derech מצפה
Okay.
כי היד ליבו חרד על ארון האלוהים והאיש בא להגיד בעיר ותזעק כל העיר.
Okay, this is a tricky pasuk to translate, but do the best you can.
And he came, and behold, Eli, the high priest, was sitting on his
Kisei
on his chair, on the chair.
on a chair. Yad derech mitzapeh. Don't try to translate that.
Okay.
It means that he was sitting near the entrance. Let's say.
Okay.
Ki hayali bo chared.
Because his heart was trembling, his heart was faint. Concerning
was trembling or was fearful.
Fearful.
Right.
Concerning the throne of God, and the man came and he told, he told in the city, and the entire city shouted.
Okay, right. So Ellie, this is now we're getting to the part that's going to be important for our discussion. But one of the things I want to point out here, in case you didn't pick up on it, but probably read the story before. What's interesting, of course, is that Ellie's waiting near, he's still in Shiloh, right? Which is where essentially the temple is, right? The Mikdash is in Shiloh, and his sons have gone into battle with the Aron. And what's he worried about? What's Eli worried about?
The Aron.
He's worried about. It's very interesting. His concern is for the Aron. Doesn't say his concern was for his sons, and we know his sons were not good people. So that's a kind of a secondary issue here, but it's just worth pointing out. So he's there. He's sitting in his chair, and then this guy comes. This man comes to tell the city, and of course he tells them what he tells them that the Aron has been captured. But Tizak Kol Ha'ir, the whole city starts cries out. Michael could want to continue.
וישמע אלי את כל הצעקה ויאמר מכל ההמון הזה, והאיש מיהר ויבוא ויגד לאלי. And Eli heard the sound of the shouting, and he said, "What is this? What is this immense sound?" And the man hurried and came and told Eli.
Okay, keep going. Eli.
ואלי בן 98 שנה, ועיניו כמה, ולא יכול לראות. And Eli was 90 years old, and his eyes were dim, and he could not see.
You're saying dim based on the context. Literally means that his eyes stood up, right? Lakum, they got up.
Okay.
They rose. But in this context, it means that his eyes stood. That is, they were no longer working. Below you, right? Like we say, if something when something stands or stands, it means right that it stopped. His eyes, you could translate it. Maybe his eyes stopped and he couldn't see. Okay, but he was quite old. He's 98 years old. Paul, why don't you pick up? ויאמר האיש.
ויאמר האיש אל עלי, אנוכי הבא מן המערכה, ואני מן המערכה, נסתי היום, ויאמר מה היה הדבר בני? And the person who fled, yes, who came to Shiloh, he told Eli, I am coming from the Maracha, from
the battlefield.
From the battlefield. And I fled from the battlefield today. And Eli asked him, what happened, my son?
Yeah.
My son.
Yeah. ויען
המבשר, ויאמר נס ישראל לפני פלישתים, וגם מגפה גדולה הייתה בעם, that's something new, וגם שני בניך מתו, חופני ופנחס, וארון האלוהים נלקחה. And מבשר, misery, don't know.
Mevaser, right? The person who's the announcer.
Who makes the announcement, yes.
Right, so the courier, whatever, this person who's coming to tell what happened, and he said,
brings with him the news, yes, the one who carries the news, and he said, Israel fled from the Plishtim, and there was also a big Magefa.
Okay, so Magefa, usually we translate as a Magefa as a plague.
A plague,
here,
yes.
Yeah, but it also just can mean a blow like a striking.
So it's not
because we said nigaf. They already said nigaf.
Nigaf and nigfu. Okay.
And nigfu, right? So he said. So that's just another way of saying it. It's a noun form, right? So they were struck with a big striking.
Yeah. Okay. Then that was okay, as you said, and both your sons, Hophni and Pinchas, died. And the Aaron, God's Aaron, was taken.
Okay, and now we're up to the pasuk that is most important to us. Go ahead, Vayhi.
Vayhi k'hazkiro et Aaron האלוהים ויפול מעל הכיסא אחורנית בעד יד השער ותישבר מפרקתו וימות. כי זקן האיש וכבד, והוא שפט את ישראל 40 שנה. So, okay. And when the emissary mentioned the Aron Elohim, Eli fell from his chair backwards, where his chair where he was sitting near the entrance, and his freket, how do you say the his neck,
the neck.
Yes, the neck, he broke. No, and the neck broke, and Eli died because he was the person he was old and dead.
He was heavy.
Maybe he wasn't very. Well, maybe I'm not sure that it's heavy here. And he was heavy, and Eli was the shofet of Israel during 40 years. Was the judge kind of, he was acting as the judge of Israel for 40 years.
Okay. So this is the death of Eli. And I read all of this just to get up to here. We didn't have to go through the whole story, but I thought, I'll take the opportunity. But what's the point? What do we but you understand why we're looking at this pasuk. Why are we looking at this pasuk?
It specifies what the moment of death was, or the moment and/or cause of death.
Okay, so tell me what you think about each of those things. At what point does he die, and why does he die?
The moment of death is when he breaks his neck.
That's right. So I could understand it that way, right? But tishaver mafrakto vayamot.
On the other hand, that also could be read sequentially. He broke his neck and then he died.
Okay, but I can read it sequentially, and I could still say that one follows the other. In other words, that there's what you're trying to say is it's not necessarily the precise moment of death, but it follows that once his neck broke is when he dies. That leads to his death. There seems to be this relationship, right? That once his neck broke, then he died. So this is not a person whose head was cut off, but his neck broke. And at the point of his neck breaking, he dies. So that seems to be significant. But what else is in the pasuk that might also be significant?
You have again the Tamei Mikra, Vayishaver Mifrato Vayamot. It's
right. It's all one
unit. It's one unit.
Right. So So Paul is pointing out because Vatishaver, this is mapach. This is the little arrow-like thing under the vet. Mapach. Kadma katon. Right. So Vatishaver mafrakto vayamot. Right. So, and what else is in the pasuk though that might be relevant to his death?
He was heavy. He was old and heavy.
He was old and he was heavy. Kizaken, because it says ki zaken ha'ish v'chavet. So ki can mean because. It could be, in other words, meaning that it's related. It's related to the death. That if I understand ki to mean because he was heavy, because he was old and he was heavy, it's related. Then I understand that to be related to the cause of death. Or it could also just mean he, like Kasher, at that moment he was old and heavy. But these are things that now we have to take into consideration. What we'll see next week, because we're going to stop here. And everyone is invited. I'll tell you, you can look at this yourself. Gemara in Masechet Chulin. Just change the screen here. We're going to look at the Gemara next week. This is the Gemara in Chulin Daf Kaf Aleph Amud Aleph. This is a sugya that is in fact dealing with shchita and related issues of shchita. And here the Gemara says, I'll just read a little bit of the Gemara. The Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Nishbara mafreket v'rov basar ima. If the neck is broken along with most of the flesh, along with most of its flesh, then mitameh ba'ohel. Then that person whose neck was broken along with his flesh, he's mitameh ba'ohel. V'im tomar Tomar said to Eli, mafreket below rov basar habayit, but maybe you'll say that story with Eli, when Eli died, it just says that his neck broke, and it doesn't say that most of his flesh broke with it. The Gemara says, Zikna shani. Old age is different. Dichtiv, vayhi kazkirot et aron ha'elokim, vayipol me'al kiseh achorani, v'ad yad hashar, v'tishaver mafrakto, v'yamat ki zaken ha'ish v'chaved. So the Gemara considers, we'll go into this Gemara a little more next week. We understand that the Gemara considers it to be relevant that he was old, that for somebody who's old, it's sufficient for them to die, even if just the neck breaks, even if it doesn't break most of the flesh with it. We'll talk about that next week. Anyway, but you see, the Gemara does bring this pasuk in this context of determining the moment of death. So we'll leave it for now, and we'll pick up here next week. And everyone is invited to look at it themselves, so you can all be well prepared. Again, it's Gemara Chulin Daf Kaf Aleph Amud Aleph. But seriously, if you want, take time and read it. You can read it with the Steinsaltz. You don't have it. The sugya is a little technical. We're not going to go into it deeply. It has more to do with other inyanim, but it's relevant to our discussion, so I want to bring it. And okay, that's it for today, unless anybody has last questions or comments. No. Okay.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
You.
Good day.
Good afternoon.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Somebody's in the States.
Yes.
Michael Werner is still in the States.
You can see by the blaze of daylight behind me.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.